Here's a list of 10 top tips and tricks to help you maximize the experience, taking your time in Hyrule to an all new level. Number 1 is don't dilly-dally when unlocking your Paraglider. The world of Hyrule becomes a lot easier and a lot more freeing to explore when you gain access to the Paraglider. Players familiar with Breath of the Wild will already know this, of course, but Tears of the Kingdom is a tad different in that it's possible to be let off the leash early without having gained Link's trusty gliding item. That's why our first tip is to not dilly-dally and instead follow the main quest until you're gifted with the Paraglider. You get it soon after speaking to the soldier at Hyrule Castle, where Purah and Robbie will help you unlock the first tower at Lookout Landing soon after. Only then will you be fired out through the top and prompted to safely and calmly glide down using the item. Trust us, don't stray too far without it and be sure to grab it early. Number 2 is to stock up on a lot of Zonai device consumables at dispensers. In addition to weapons, shields and general materials ideal for fusing, at several points in the early hours you'll discover green-laden gadgets and gizmos known as Zonai devices. There's the wing that helps you glide up above, wheels both big and small that can be attached to boards to form vehicles, and fire extinguishers, useful for cooling down hot areas and clearing sludge. When you first happen upon Zonai devices, they'll be out and about in the world. However, if you find a Zonai dispenser and deposit Zonai materials, gained from defeating construct enemies, you'll be gifted with capsules that contain the devices that can be used for later. Our tip is to stock up on as many of these as you can early on, ensuring you have a pocket full of Zonai devices that can be taken out and used at any time depending on the situation. It's incredibly handy. Our third tip is to speak to Hestu while at Lookout Tower. Speaking of the tower at Lookout Landing, while you're here you'll meet a familiar face in the form of Hestu, all-round jolly maracas fan and musical representative of the Koroks. You'll find him located in between Lookout Landing's general store and mini stable, where he'll quickly inform you of his capability to expand your inventory space. This will come in super useful even early on, as all bows, melee weapons and shields still have a tendency to break. For the price of just a few Korok seeds found by completing puzzles in the world and helping other Korok travelers reach one another, you can choose to expand the inventory space of all 3 categories. Just bear in mind that the price to expand each grows by 1 Korok seed each time, so you'll need to consider whether bows, melee weapons or shields are the most important to you. Tip number 4 is to experiment with fuse right away, if only to make badass weapons. Because fortunately, as frustrating as your weapons and shields constantly breaking can be, fuse comes in especially handy as one of Link's 4 new powers to help you reinforce them. Absolutely any material or object can be fused onto your weapon to make it stronger and potentially imbue it with special qualities. Fusing a ruby or red choo-choo jelly with a sword or hammer, for instance, will give it fire-centric powers. That's why our top tip here is to just go crazy, be creative, and just generally go to great lengths to be as experimental with fuse as possible. Already, players have discovered that you can fuse a minecart to a shield in order to grind rails, fuse a bomb to a boomerang to absolutely decimate enemies from a distance, and so on. Take the time to experiment with fuse, and you might discover an ingenious combination. Our 5th top tip is to enter and explore every cave you come across. While it's true that the Hyrule in Tears of the Kingdom feels familiar due to reusing the same map, in addition to the Sky Islands, there's plenty of more areas to explore thanks to the inclusion of wells and caves. It's in these locations, littered around the world, where you can go mining for precious stones and other useful materials ideal for crafting, all of which makes them well worth seeking out. Some of the caves in Tears of the Kingdom will be incredibly dark, meaning you'll have to either throw or shoot out bright bloom seeds using your bow just to be able to see. Once illuminated, be wary of the new worm-like enemies that protrude out of the cave walls and have a tendency to leech at you. The good news is that they're often guarding chests containing high-power weapons or rare materials, which, when combined with the ore waiting to be mined in the caves anyway, makes these areas well worth digging into. Our 6th top tip is to just ignore the quest markers and explore of your own accord. The beauty of a game like Tears of the Kingdom is that there's a whole map to explore, much of which is initially unknown to you. Unlike other open world games like, say, Assassin's Creed or Horizon Forbidden West, the map isn't littered with icons until you physically go and discover what's there for yourself. That's why we'd recommend ignoring the markers, even those of the main quest, to explore away independently. From basic enemy encampments to sky-high islands with puzzles and new devices to uncover, there are 3 different levels of Hyrule to explore in Tears of the Kingdom. That's 2.5 times the size of the world first presented in Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now that might seem intimidating at first, but thankfully none of it ever overwhelms you, because you're encouraged to explore and discover without the pressure of being bombarded by markers. Ah, lovely. Our 7th top tip is don't neglect the sky and the depths. Exploring the ground level map of Hyrule will only get you so far in your mission to save Zelda, but luckily at certain points you'll be encouraged to venture off to both the Sky Islands and a mysterious underground location known only as the Depths, both of which heed different kinds of rewards compared to what you typically expect to find in the map that you're already familiar with. As with the cave areas already mentioned, you'll need to litter the depths with countless bright bloom seeds just to be able to see ahead and get around. Also, you'll want to be wary of a mysterious substance called gloom, which if touched will temporarily limit Link's maximum available hearts. It's worth being equally prepared for the Sky Islands though too, if only because there's a total of 32 shrines waiting for you to seek out and find. Top tip number 8 is to venture into harder areas to reap some serious top level loot. In addition to the depths, Tears of the Kingdom can catch you off guard with the number of harder areas available to explore. The Gerudo Desert, for instance, is impossible to roam freely without the appropriate headgear and armour for fear of burning up. That's why it's well worth investing into clothing that provides adequate heat and cold resistances as early as possible, because then you'll be able to venture to more challenging locations to seek out that precious top level loot. Hyrule Castle itself is also one of these areas, and while it's available to enter at the very start of the game, just as it was in Breath of the Wild, it's absolutely caked with challenging enemies that will wipe almost all of Link's hearts out in an instant in just one fell swoop. But don't let that put you off though, because it's home to such precious materials as diamonds, powerful soldier gear, and even the Hylian shield itself. One of the best in the game. Tip number 9 is to unlock as many towers as you can. Now, it might be a bit of an obvious one to mention, but we really can't understate the importance of unlocking all the towers you come across, pretty much as soon as you see them. Not only are they useful for revealing each region of the map, but unlike Breath of the Wild, they shoot you up into the sky, making it easy to float to interesting locations in Hyrule itself, as well as the Sky Islands above. Most of the lookout towers will require you to complete a challenge before they become available, but they're only ever very brief and are almost always straightforward to complete. Considering the benefits they grant you and verticality they add to exploration, it's worth ticking them off as early as possible. You'll gain a much better sense of the world and it'll be made easier to get around it. Our 10th and final tip is to experiment with Ultrahand. Just go and make some weird ass contraptions and doohickeys. Easily the most important and useful power in Tears of the Kingdom is Ultrahand, which lets Link connect together almost any two objects in classic Pritt Stick style fashion. Now initially the game will offer breadcrumbs of how to create basic planes, cars to control and fan-powered minecarts, but of course the power's true potential only ever really comes to life when you take the time to get creative and experiment. Already, players have created giant hulking robots and all manner of Korok torturing devices as they test the limits of Ultrahand. That's why every Tears of the Kingdom player should experiment using all the Zonai devices to create contraptions that are potentially yet to be realised. They can then be used in a way to break the game and aid you in getting around in ways that you previously never thought possible. So there you have it for our top 10 tips when either first starting out in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom or figuring out things to do next. Let us know what you think of these tips in the comments section below, as well as your own top tips that you want players to try out. Until next time guys, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.